Pleasant good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday to you all. Hope everyone is having a great start to their Thursday. Jamie in here with the first. Hello to Sean. Hello to everybody else that's hopping in the chat. We've got a news and notes edition here of the show today. We're going to talk about Stefon Diggs. Haven't gotten a chance to really touch on that story here on the show. We'll talk about the running back holdouts of Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs. And then I found a cool chart here while prepping for the show that I thought would be very, very interesting, and is kind of in line with what we're doing with the positional ranking stuff that I saw from Jason at overthecap.com. Actually, tweeted this out this morning, and so we will take a look at that as well, and whatever else you guys want to talk about over the course of the show. Good morning, Bailey. Hope you are doing well today. So yeah, a bit of a news and notes edition here of the show. We're back into the positional rankings tomorrow with corners, but wanted to take a break from that. We've been going every other day with those, and there's been some stories, been some pieces of news, some pieces of fodder that we haven't really gotten a chance to touch on here on this show in depth. I haven't had an opportunity to share my thoughts, so figured that would be a great topic for us to discuss here today. So we'll go to the full screen with the camera, and we'll jump right into it. I don't expect this to be a back and forth show with 45 minutes of debate, but I think we'll have a fun show nonetheless. So again, hope everyone's having a great start to their Thursday, and we'll get this thing started right now. And welcome into the Thursday edition of the TDN Daily podcast. Chris Schubert back with you here once again on the show. Hope everybody is having a fantastic start to their Thursday. We've got a fun one in store for you here today. We're taking a quick 60-second timeout from our positional series, a positional ranking series. That's back tomorrow with corners. We're getting to the tail end of that series. But today, some news and notes, some stories that have been trending in the world of the National Football League that we really have not gotten a chance to dive into here in depth on this show that have happened this week. The Stefon Diggs situation, a couple of running back holdouts in Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, and I've got a cool graphic that I'm going to show the live YouTube audience, and we'll have a conversation about that as well. So a pretty fun show here for you today as we do a little bit of a news and notes edition of the show. And the Stefon Diggs situation, probably the biggest story in the National Football League right now. A very odd, very weird story. Our resident Bills fan in the chat, Sean Black, did say in the pre-show that the Diggs situation is getting way overhyped. And I can understand the sentiment, and I don't think I necessarily disagree. But Sean, I think you would also agree with the notion that this has been a very, very weird situation. It has been a very weird situation dating back to the end of the season with some of the cryptic messages that have kind of come out from Stefon Diggs' camp. And it is felt like it has been a very, very weird situation between Stefon Diggs and the Bills since the end of the season. And that carried over through whatever that weird absence, being at practice, leaving practice, Sean McDermott saying he's very concerned. Then the next day, Diggs is back and everything's fine. Josh Allen's weird presser. I mean, I think even you will admit that it has been a very weird week in Buffalo land because Sean McDermott is normally a guy that doesn't give a lot away. Doesn't give away a lot of information, doesn't give away a lot of answers. He's very stoic, very blunt, very to the point, but kind of does not wade into the waters of giving the media a whole lot to run with. And he kind of gave the media a whole lot to run with Diggs' absence in mandatory minicamp and using the term very concerned. It's not something that was floated to him. It's as a question. It was something he brought up that he was very concerned about Diggs' absence. And then 24 hours later, it's all water under the bridge, nothing to worry about. He's here. Like, it just was a very, very weird 24 hours. And in isolation, I don't think it would be a big deal, but it's not as if the Stefon Diggs-Bills relationship has been all, peachy since the end of the 2022-2023 season for the Bills. And so it's something to keep an eye on. It's something to monitor. Stefon Diggs' future in Buffalo is going to be something to keep an eye on. It was never going to come to a head this season. I'll pull up the numbers here on my other screen, but just to have the exact financials. But it would have been an albatross for the Bills to move if they even wanted to consider moving him. But yes, the idea of Stefon Diggs not playing for the Buffalo Bills this year, the percentage of that was zero. There was never a scenario in which they were going to move on from him. Just to give you an example, if they were to cut him post June 1, which again, I'm just giving you the information, right? If they were to cut him post June 1, it would be $14.3 million in dead cap for this season. If they were to trade him post June 1, which is where we're at, it would be $13.2 million in dead money this year, and then I think it would carry a dead cap hit next year as well. I think in the $8 million range. So it's one of those things where financially it would have made no sense. They were never going to trade Stefon Diggs to an AFC team, so financially it doesn't make sense. You'd be limiting the pool of teams that you could potentially make a trade with. It just logically was never going to happen. But it doesn't mean that the long-term ramifications of a guy that still has 4 years on his deal after this one. Stefon Diggs still under contract for 2024, 2025, 2026, and 2027. And I'm looking here right now. He's got his guaranteed salary for 2024. It becomes fully guaranteed on March 19th. So pretty early into 2024, we're going to have this conversation. But for anybody thinking that this was going to impact 2023, no, the financials never made any sense for that to be the case. But still a very weird situation, still something worth monitoring and something that feels very, very weird. But again, if they were to trade him right now, it would be a $13 million dead cap hit in 2023. It would actually be a $31 million dead cap hit in 2024. So financially, it doesn't make any sense. But next season, I think it's maybe a little bit better. As a pre-June 1 trade, they take $31 million in dead cap hit. As a post-June 1 trade, he's 8.8 in dead cap for 2024 and 22.2 for dead cap in 2025. So even then, it's not really movable each of the next 2 seasons. Really, where you'd have to get out of this is 2025. Truly, just with a $22 million dead cap hit. But yeah, the contract's not really in a place for it to be moved. And so I think that would be the thing that my big takeaway from this is that, yes, it was a weird week. Yes, there are some things that concern me. Yes, I would worry about the long-term future of Stefon Diggs in Buffalo, but it was never going to impact 2023, which is very weird to see the way Sean McDermott handled it. It was weird to see, not the way Josh Allen handled it, but it was weird some of the comments that Josh Allen made me feel, just weird and odd about this. And Sean says in the chat, I think it was a combination of him just being upset about how the season ended. His production dipped substantially once Josh Allen hurt his elbow and his wide receiver coach getting let go. Not the way I would have handled it, though. They obviously did not have the hard conversation until now. McDermott blowing it was super odd. Yeah, blowing it off was super odd. Yeah, I mean, that's, McDermott is the key to this chess board that I didn't understand, right? I could understand Diggs' frustration, being upset the way the season ended, being upset that, they're trying to break through and win a Super Bowl and it ultimately didn't get to that point. I can understand that. I can understand of being upset about your production. All those things are things that I can conceivably get my head around. I couldn't get my head around the way Sean McDermott chose to handle it on that first day. And so I don't want to put too much into this. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what conversations have been had. But again, I thought it was a newsworthy story for us to kind of touch on here on the show. And my thoughts are, I would file it away. It's something to keep an eye on. It was a weird week. It was a weird way that it was handled. But I don't think it's going to change the way I feel about the Buffalo Bills going into 2023. Now I'm not as high on the Buffalo Bills as other people are for 2023, but they're still a team that is, probably the favorites in their division. They're one of the teams you got to keep an eye on in the AFC. And what happened this week doesn't necessarily change that. Bailey says, I do think this is just part of the Diggs experience. He's a bit erratic and will have these issues, but he is such a stud, it makes it all worth it. I mean, if McDermott did not say that he was very concerned or we're even talking about this. Sean, I don't think so. I don't think an absence at mandatory minicamp would have warranted this level of reaction. But I think because McDermott is so good at that, he's so good at not putting attention onto things, he's so good at not saying the wrong thing, that when he does say something that's noteworthy, when he does say something that's newsworthy, and we had the context of the way the season ended, and we have the context of it not being a perfect situation, I think it turned up the octave a little bit, and it turned it up to a 12. But again, my big takeaway from this is I file it away. I think it's a storyline for the 2023 offseason, the 2024 offseason. But it's not something that I think is going to have a major impact here on the 2023 Bills. What could have an impact on some 2023 teams are these holdouts that running backs are currently having, and those two running backs being Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, both of whom got the franchise tag placed on them by their respective teams, the Raiders and the Giants. And I think when we look at this, I'm not surprised that this is the path that both of these running backs are taking. I mean, was it Josh? I think it was Josh who said that there was some collusion going around to keep the running backs, underpaid because they tagged Tony Pollard, they tagged Zeke, they tagged Josh Jacobs, they tagged Saquon Barkley. Those three running backs got tagged, and Josh kind of made the statement that it was kind of collusion, that the NFL owners were colluding against these running backs in order to suppress their dollar amounts, to suppress their salaries. And look, I think going into this offseason, we knew that, and I want to look at these cases individually. We knew that the New York Giants were going to sign one of Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley to a long-term contract extension and tag the other one as a stopgap method to be able to work out a long-term extension down the road, right? That was always the plan. Can't tag both guys. They want both guys on their team. Both guys were incredibly crucial to the success that this team had in 2022 in order to make the surprising run to the playoffs. And so the 2023 Giants were always going to have Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley on their roster. It was just, what path were the Giants going to take? Were they going to prioritize getting a Saquon Barkley deal done first and then tag Jones and work out a deal later? Or were they going to tag Barkley and get a deal done with Jones? Because they wanted to make sure that when the tag deadline came, that they had an answer on both guys. That one guy was signed to a contract and one guy had the franchise tag on them, so they did not potentially have either of those guys flirt with free agency. And so the path that the Giants ultimately chose, and I think it was the right one, all things considered, was they got the long-term deal worked out with Daniel Jones, worked out the long-term deal with their quarterback, and it's not a super long-term deal. It's a kind of a medium-term deal. For the next couple of seasons, they have their quarterback kind of lined up, and they put the franchise tag on Saquon Barkley, giving them an opportunity. They still got plenty of time. They've got weeks, like a month or two, to be able to work out a long-term contract extension with Saquon Barkley, and I fully anticipate them doing so. Saquon Barkley holding out while waiting for that long-term deal is just part of the way that this goes. No player that's under the franchise tag and who hasn't signed the franchise tag yet isn't going to show up to a camp where there's an opportunity to get hurt. And I think when you look at, I'll just use the Jets as an example because they just had an injury happen to them recently that's fresh in my mind. They just traded for Chuck Clark in this past offseason, and he gets hurt and tears his ACL reportedly, and is more than likely going to have to miss the season. If you're Saquon Barkley and you're working out a long-term deal and you haven't signed the franchise tag yet, are you going to put yourself at risk? No, you're going to let the process play out. And I think the Giants knew that this was going to happen. I think Saquon Barkley knew this was going to happen. And so this is just the cost of doing business this way. And I think the Giants had to very full well know that once they put the franchise tag on Saquon Barkley, that a guy at a position that is not paid, very well comparatively, running backs don't get paid very well. A guy that has had an injury history, that has missed some time, he's not going to put himself at risk. If he goes out there and gets hurt in mini camp or in OTAs or whatever the case may be, and now the Giants are going to, not have him for a year, that long-term deal looks completely different. And so from both sides, I think it makes total sense. I think they'll ultimately get a deal done. They'll find a way to get this done. And if not, I think Saquon Barkley will just play on the franchise tag. I think everybody learned from what Le'Veon Bell did. I think everybody learned from the disaster that decision ultimately ended up being for Le'Veon Bell. And I do not see a player doing that. I do see a player taking this up until the last possible second in order to get a deal done. And I think that's exactly what's happening here. And I think the same thing is happening in Vegas with Josh Jacobs. Now, the interesting thing with Jacobs is going into the 2022 season, I thought it was all but assured that Josh Jacobs would have been playing elsewhere in 2023. I thought that with the way that he was used in the Hall of Fame game, the way that Josh McDaniels talked about him, I just thought the statistical history of Josh Jacobs, that he was going to be playing elsewhere this season, and he played really well for them in 2022. And I think ultimately kind of forced their hand here with being one of the few remaining good players that they still have left on that team as they kind of go through this transition. Derek Carr is gone. They trade Darren Waller. The team looks a lot different. They still got Devontae Adams, but the team looks a lot different at quarterback. One of your key offensive players is gone. Like, team's different. Team's undergone some overhaul. Jimmy G's in there at quarterback, and so it's just different. And so I think having somebody that the fans can rally around, a guy that's been there for a while, a guy that's been their guy, is something that I think was valuable to them. And I think very similarly to the way I feel about the Saquon Barkley situation, I feel about the Josh Jacobs situation. I don't see either of these guys sitting out the 2023 season. I don't see them letting this linger into the regular season. Are they going to take it up until the absolute maximum second, the last second, in order to get a deal done? Yeah, I think both guys are going to do that. This time between when the tag was put on a player and a long-term deal gets done, or they just sign the franchise tag, is that weird time where you go through the roller coaster of emotions if you're a fan of either of these teams, and you worry about whether or not that player is going to play for you. But I think you got to step back and take the 30,000-foot view of more than likely how things are going to get done. Dylan asks, who would benefit more by paying their current running back, the Giants or the Raiders? The Giants 100%. The Giants 100%. Here's why. I think Saquon Barkley matters more to the way the Giants are currently constructed than I do the way the Raiders are going to run their team with Josh McDaniels and have with Josh McDaniels. I think what you've seen in Josh McDaniels is a direct, we saw all those teams in New England the offenses that he ran. You didn't need a star running back. He was able to get it done, piecemealing it together with a bunch of guys. And so for me, I think it's very important that the Giants have Saquon Barkley because I think as he goes, they go. There are some limitations with Daniel Jones, and their offense is just so predicated with Saquon Barkley being able to open things up in the passing game because you just have to account for Saquon in the backfield. So for me, it would be the Giants. Dylan says their window is right now based on the roster construction. Vegas has time to slow play it, so I agree with you. I mean, that's another layer to it, right? I mean, I know they brought in Jimmy G, but this Raiders roster isn't very good statistically. For us in our positional rankings, they're ranking towards the bottom in most of the categories. So when you look at where they're at, I still think they're doing a rebuild. The Giants were a playoff team last year, and I think, whether or not they win the same amount of games as they did a year ago, whether or not the expectations are to be a playoff team or not, the New York market demands a lot out of a football team. And the New York market is going to see that Brian Daboll came in his first year and got Danny Dimes, got Daniel Jones to a point where he was playing some pretty good football, got this team to playing some really good team football. They were just battling. They were grinding it out for 4 quarters every single week. They were making it difficult for you. And the fan base in New York is going to expect that again of the New York Giants. They're not going to expect that this team's going to take a step backwards. They expect this team to be just as relevant as they were a year ago. They expect this team to be just as good as they were a year ago. And they made investments in the draft to be able to add to this team, made some investments on the offensive line with John Michael Schmitz, invested in the corner room with Deonte Banks. I mean, they've got players. They've gone out there and have some overhauled this team to where the fan base is going to expect them to be competitive and to be relevant. And so Saquon Barkley is a big piece of that. So if I had to answer that question, who would benefit more? It's the Giants, because I think Saquon Barkley is more of the Giants' identity offensively than Josh Jacobs would be in the Raiders, considering the coaching staff. So again, I think both things get done. I think both players play for their team next season, whether it's under long-term deals. If you'd ask me which player gets a long-term deal, and I can only pick one, I would pick Saquon. I think the Raiders are incredibly comfortable having Jacobs play on another prove-it year, 1-year franchise tag, and let it play out. I think the Giants are much more willing to get a long-term deal done with Saquon, if I had to guess between the two. Okay, I have a chart for everybody that I want to close the show with. So just give me 2 seconds, and I will pull this up, and we can have this conversation. I just need to get this in a place where it can be shared, and I think we're okay. Hopefully you guys can see this. It is loading. Give me a second. I have to get the... Yeah, there we go. Okay. So this is from Jason at overthecap.com. He put this chart together, and I'm blocking one team. I'm blocking the Chargers. The Chargers are right above my little box. Actually, I'll shrink myself down a little bit. Give me a second here. You guys can see the whole chart. Okay, this is better. So this chart here, it was put together by Jason at overthecap.com, and along the bottom is the 2024 cap room with carryover per team. So if you're over to the right side of the line that goes vertically, that means you have lots of cap space for 2024. If you're to the left, it means you have little cap space to negative cap space in 2024. And then your horizontal line is, and let me just make sure I read this correctly. 2024 unrestricted free agents, 30% plus snaps in 2022, meaning that these teams have players in 2024 unrestricted free agency that had 30% or more snaps for them in 2022. And so what you'll see is if you're above the horizontal line, that means you have a lot of players who played a decent amount of snaps for you that are going to be unrestricted free agents in 2024. And if you are down below, that means you have a limited number of players who were decent contributors to major contributors for you that are going to be free agents. And so what you will see is the teams that are in the top left are the teams with the least amount of cap space in 2024 and the most amount of players that are going to be unrestricted free agents in 2024 that have been decent to major contributors. And so we would define that as win now. And what my big takeaway from looking at this list is look at the 3 teams in the AFC East that are just sitting on top of each other, that being the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins. And we have all talked about how we have thought that is going to be a 3-team battle to win this division. If you don't think those 3 teams are all in and those 3 teams are completely in a window where they are just going to battle it out and their rosters are in a place where they are really trying to go for it in 2023, this tells you that they are. Some other teams that are close, that are kind of, in this group, you've got the Baltimore Ravens, who are kind of in there. The Seahawks are kind of flirting with the line. The Browns are kind of flirting with the line. The big thing here is the teams in the upper right quadrant, the top right. And Jason has a tweet thread, and I'll read it to you here. Teams in the top left quadrant, which we just talked about, are really all in for this year. Bad cap position for 2024 and expected roster turnover. Teams in the bottom left also don't have a lot riding on the season, but don't have a ton of turnover, so they can run it back easier with restructures. And I think teams that you look at in this class that you should keep an eye on will be the 49ers, the Saints. I think the Chargers are in here as well. I would keep an eye on the Jags, teams that are kind of middling teams that could be sleeper playoff teams, could make some runs. These are teams that I'm keeping an eye on here. Teams in the top right are in strong position with the cap next year and can decide between free agency or extending their own. Teams in the bottom right are the ones who are likely to be active in free agency or with early extensions in 2024. Bailey says also with the Texans and Bears specifically, I think a lot of those free agents that started this year might become backups already this year, so aren't losing too much. Yeah, I think the big thing here that you look at in this bottom right quadrant, right, is you've got the Bengals, who are going to pay Burrow here pretty soon, and they're going to have to pay Chase pretty soon, so that's where a lot of their money's going to go. The Lions are a team that really kind of give me some confidence with where they sit, but then I love, we talk about building the right way, and I've been critical of the Bears, and I still think they're kind of doing things incorrectly, but they've got a ton of cap space, and they've got players that are going to become unrestricted free agents, so they can choose to bring those guys back, or they can just completely kind of cut bait and move on. The Texans are in there. It would scare me if I was a team in the NFC to see the Philadelphia Eagles in this quadrant. To have this level of cap space and to have this kind of flexibility would scare me. Do the Lions get out in front of a Goff extension? They might, and that's kind of one of the things that being in this kind of situation could provide for you, is that you could make those kinds of determinations, right? Look at the Cardinals. Look at what Monty Ossenfort has kind of inherited and kind of already done some of the groundwork on. They've paid Kyler already, and they're in a space where they've got $90 million, and they don't have a ton of guys that are going to be walking out the door that were major contributors for them in 2024. So they can work out extensions with players if they want, or they can be extremely active in free agency and go out and fix their team very, very quickly. And so, this is a clump of teams here, the Cardinals, the Bengals, and the Lions, that I would classify in 3 different tiers of where they currently sit. But 3 teams that are going to be, I think, extremely, extremely active in the transaction wire in 2024 very, very quickly, whether it is through extensions or whether it is through free agency. I think the Cardinals and Lions would be teams to keep an eye on ahead of free agency, where the Bengals, I think, are going to be working out those long-term extensions with some of their big players. But I saw this chart. I thought it would be interesting. I thought it was fascinating to see the teams that find themselves in this top right quadrant, that have the roster turnover and are going to have a lot of cap space to be able to operate in 2024. None of the NFC East are really all in, despite it being considered a strong division. Yeah, you've got the Eagles in a good position with cap space and roster turnover. You've got the Cowboys kind of flirting around the exact middle point of this chart. The Giants, again, also with the Eagles and the Commanders in that top right quadrant as well. They can decide if they want to bring players back, and if those players aren't, good enough for them and they want to move in a different direction, they've got a ton of cap space to be able to replace those players. So it's a nice position to be in. I talk about flexibility pretty regularly on the show, about teams that find themselves in an opportunity to be flexible, to take every opportunity that comes in front of them, and to be able to actually entertain those possibilities. Those teams are very dangerous when it comes to the free agent market and the offseason at large. So thought that chart was pretty cool. Thought I would share it here to close out this show. And that is how we are going to close out this show. We've got One more show in the books this week, the positional rankings. We're doing the cornerback room tomorrow here on the show as we get closer and closer to filling out the actual list. And I shared it in the post show yesterday as a surprise, but we have a chart rolling now. We have a Google Sheet rolling where I'm inputting all of the data in real time, and we are getting an average, a cumulative average of where these teams' position groups ultimately end up, and it'll kind of give us our first power rankings for 2023, how I view these teams. Going into the 2023 season. Taylor B says, I don't know what being low on the vertical axis means. So it means, real quick, before we get out of here, it means that they have only a few players that are going to be unrestricted free agents in 2024 that played 30% or more snaps in 2022. And so think of it as a player who's playing a decent amount, at least, at worst. If not a player that's maybe playing 70 or 80% of snaps. So if you're lower on the list, if you're lower on that vertical axis, that means you don't have a lot of players that you have that are decent contributors for you that are going to become free agents. And so if you pair that with having a ton of cap space, like let's say the Bengals, Cardinals, and Lions do, it gives you ultimate flexibility to work out extensions. It gives you ultimate flexibility to go out in free agency. And if you're in the top right, where you maybe have a little bit more in terms of players that are going to be unrestricted free agents that were key contributors for you, 30% or more snaps in 2022, you can go one of two ways. Because you have so much cap space, you can choose to bring those guys back if you want, and you have the cap space to do so, or you have the roster turnover that you can use that cap space on in general. So you want to be on those two sides of the chart, in my opinion. But yeah, they're just different ways to kind of team build, and it shows where different teams are at in their life cycle. But I shared this in the post show yesterday. But we have that Google Sheet rolling, and we have the cumulative average, so it'll give us our first power rankings for these teams when we finish this positional series here in the 2023 offseason. Please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. We greatly do appreciate it. It helps us out a ton here. Continue to grow this show. Continue to grow the momentum here in the summertime. We're getting ever so close to preseason games, to regular season games, and cannot wait to be sharing these airwaves with you, the video screen with you here on the YouTube side of things for the football season. Should be a lot of fun. Really going to be our first full season with TDN Daily in the football season. We started this show in this format with me in October, doing it in an audio format. We've gone to the video format here in the offseason, so this will be the first time that we'll be able to gather each and every day of the week here live on YouTube during the football season. And so I cannot wait for the conversations that we're going to have during that season, so it should be a lot of fun. You can catch us on the YouTube side of things Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the live YouTube version. You can be a part of the chat. You can be a part of the show, the pre-show, and the post-show. If you want to catch us on demand, you can always do so afterwards. YouTube Music. We are live in the YouTube Music app as a podcast. You can see the video version there as well, or you can just listen to the audio version if you'd like. But the full uncut version of the show is there as well. So if you're a user, a subscriber to YouTube Music, the TDN Daily podcast is there for you to consume as well. But I appreciate everybody making this show a part of their day, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. We're into the pre-show, folks. Into the pre-show. A little news and notes edition. We went 25 minutes on a news and notes edition. I wasn't sure how long we were going to go. Quick sip of my cherry Coke, zero sugar. What else we want to talk about here? I've got some time before I got to edit the show. I can pull the chart back up if we want. If there's something else that we want to talk about, I can do that as well. But I will leave it totally up to you guys. We'll leave it all in your hands here on a Thursday. Is everybody excited for the corner room discussion tomorrow? I have not started. SEC schedules. I did see these SEC schedules. Tennessee's got a tough schedule, I think was my immediate takeaway. What are your 5 favorite sports in order? Bailey wants to know my 5 favorite sports in order. 5 favorite sports in order. Am I splitting college football and pro football for the sake of this conversation, Bailey? Florida is screwed next year. It's not an easy schedule. I saw the chart of the schedules. I have not seen. So I'm splitting these up. Okay. Baseball's number one. Baseball's number one for me. I've been a baseball guy through and through. Always have, always will be. I would put college football too. I love college football. I don't think there's anything better than sitting down on a Saturday for me here on the West Coast, waking up at 7, 8 in the morning, and, making breakfast, running to the store, getting stuff ready for the day, and then just plopping myself on the couch and I got multiple screens. I'm watching games. Obviously, it's what we do here at the Draft Network. But even before that, I was a huge fan of college football. In college, if I wasn't going to an ASU game and maybe they were on the road or they were playing late in the day, I mean, we'd have buddies come over and we'd have multiple TVs in the dorm rooms and just watching games. Like it's my favorite. So I put that 2. I put Formula 1 3. I love Formula 1. I wake up early for qualifying. I wake up early for races. So Formula 1 will be 3 for me. I'll go NFL 4, and I'll go Premier League soccer, just soccer in general 5 would be the 5 in that order. I'm a huge pro wrestling fan, but I don't think that's in the spirit of what you're asking. But because pro wrestling would be super high on the list, if it counted. But yeah, those would be the 5 for me. I don't think there's. Heldy says, I got to be honest, Chris, I'm not a huge fan of the Money in the Bank lineup this year. It's likely they just lined it up. What are you, Heldy? What are you talking about, dude? You're telling me that you can't make a case for any of those guys to win? You're telling me that you wouldn't be surprised of Damian Priest walking around with the Money in the Bank briefcase, teasing more dissension amongst the Judgment Day? You're telling me it's out of the realm of possibility that former Royal Rumble winner Shinsuke Nakamura guy who's main event at WrestleMania, or has been in a main event match at WrestleMania, I should say, could win? I don't know. I think you can make a case for any of those guys, especially with Triple H booking things. You could tell me Santos Escobar could win. Is it likely? No. I think he would be lower on if we were doing the list. But yeah, I mean, I think LA Knight and Damian Priest are the favorites, but I wouldn't count out any of the other guys. I think the card in general is going to be really good. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm struggling with F1 this year due to the dominance of that Red Bull. We are getting solid midfield battles, but seeing cars just blow past each other with DRS and less with skill is putting me off. Yeah, I get it, Bailey. I'm a Red Bull guy. I'm a Max guy. So I'm thoroughly enjoying what we're seeing, but I can understand and I can appreciate the perspective of, because when as a Max fan watching, Bottas and Hamilton kind of run away and hide with races each and every week because their car was so much better and Max didn't have a teammate to help battle. I've been on that end of the coin. So I totally understand and respect it. Yeah, the DRS is a tough thing, and the Red Bull have just mastered it, right? Their DRS is just on another level for everybody else. The Camaro at Le Mans was pretty good. Yeah. Tate, I'm a huge video game guy. Huge. Massive. I'm in the process of picking out the parts for my next gaming PC. Because there's a game coming out soon that I am building a PC for. Yeah, I'm a huge video game guy. That's kind of my thing. I don't do a lot of TV. I don't do a lot of movies. Certain movies. I like Marvel stuff. And like I'm going to see the new Oppenheimer movie. We've done this bit on the show before where I've talked about movies that are coming out that I'm really, really excited about. But yeah, my thing is my 2 things outside of like sports are video games, and I am a huge poker fan. I love playing poker. Those are my 2 things. Taylor B, right now I'm currently playing a ton of Rainbow Six Siege with some friends. We have a group that we've been playing a lot. We're at I don't know, I've played over 300 hours of the game. I've been playing a lot of that. I just re-downloaded and I'm actually going to go through and finish Cyberpunk 2077 because the new DLC is coming out in September. So I'm actually go through and play that. And then the game that I am building the PC for that I'm over the moon about, and I can't wait, is Starfield when that releases in September. I have been waiting for that game since it was first announced years ago. So I have been patiently waiting. I'm actually in the process of ordering my Starfield limited edition controller. I'm very, very excited for that in September. Healthy, in order for me to play Tears of the Kingdom, I have to defeat Breath of the Wild. So we'll get there, but I have to beat Breath of the Wild first. But yeah, that's my current game list. I'm a huge sim guy. So I play a lot of Football Manager with a buddy as well. City Skylines 2 is coming out later this year. I'm really excited about. Bailey says, I think the only realistic challenge is Alonso and the Aston. If they nail upgrades, Ferrari always screw up strategy, and Mercedes, while having a good driver, has messed this year's setup. Starfield, yeah, Starfield is the new Bethesda game, Taylor. Yeah, the makers of Skyrim and Fallout, and yeah, it's their first new world in 25 years. They've just been in the Fallout and Skyrim and Elder Scrolls for a while, so this is their first new IP. Yeah, Bailey, I don't disagree. I mean, Ferrari's strategy hasn't been very good. And Mercedes has two great drivers, but I still think the car's a little bit behind. I think they're getting there. I mean, they've been better the last couple of races. Heldy, did you watch the Starfield Direct? If anybody is a fan of Bethesda or a fan of those types of games, RPG games, I highly recommend watching the Starfield Direct that just came out. It was a 45-minute deep dive into the game. And I've been a huge Starfield guy. I've been looking forward to it for a while, and I've kind of put up with all of the delays and put up with everything, and I've kind of tried to dampen my expectations a little bit. But the Starfield Direct and the 45-minute showcase that they showed most of the game that they've ever showed, it has the hype back up to a bajillion for me. So I'm very, very excited. I like how we sidebarred completely out of talking about football, talking about other sports. Yeah, well, I'm gonna get it on Game Pass, Heldy, because I have Game Pass, and so it's a day one release there. So if it stinks, oh no, Heldy, it's absolutely a day one launch on Game Pass. Bethesda's owned by Xbox now, so it's a day one exclusive over there. So yeah, it's a day one launch on Game Pass. The post show doesn't need to be about sports. That's true, Taylor. It's true. The post show doesn't have to be about sports. It's the post show for a reason. It's fair. Yeah, it launches on Game Pass September 6th, and if you pre-order the upgrade to the premium edition and you're a Game Pass subscriber, you can do it for $35, and it gives you the first DLC, the first story DLC, and you get early access 5 days early, so you can access it on the 31st of August. I have Game Pass Ultimate, yes, so I have it on both my PC, my. In fact, I do this show on a gaming laptop. That's how I stream to you guys. And so this gaming laptop is what I play on when I'm in here, and then I have a Series X outside that I play on if I'm playing console games with buddies. So that's what I do. If they're owned by Xbox, will it be on PS5? It will not, Taylor. It is an Xbox only exclusive. Xbox and PC. It's only available there. Were you an Elden Ring guy? I was not, Tate. I was not. I haven't played a single Fallout. I have not played a Elden Ring. I haven't played Elden Ring. Haven't played Skyrim. Haven't played any of those games. I will tell you that I love space and I love sci-fi. Like, that's my thing. And so nothing has felt right since I beat it. Life is empty now. That's what Elden Ring does to you. That's what those games kind of do to you. Those Dark Souls and Elden Ring games. Okay, somebody asked about the SEC schedule, and so I'm going to get us back on track. But if anybody wants to ask any more questions about games or have any more of these conversations, that's fine. But I do want to share the schedules. These are the 2024 schedules, right? That I'm looking for. Who does Texas play in 2024? Do we have a full SEC release schedule? Yes. What current save are you doing on FM? So I have two, Bailey. So me and a buddy have Football Manager 2020, and we are doing a career mode. I am West Ham, obviously, and he was Wolves. He got fired, and so he's Stoke. I think he's Stoke. He's in a lower league. And so that's that one. And then I have one in Football Manager 2023 because it's available on Game Pass, in which I am West Ham as well in that one. Alabama has away games at LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. That's tough. What does Oklahoma and Texas's schedules look like? Oklahoma has to go to Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, and Missouri. And they get to host Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina, and they get Texas in a neutral. And then Texas has Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and State at home. And they avoid Alabama. Wow, those are some pretty soft schedules for those. I mean, soft relative to what you would expect in the SEC for Texas. Oklahoma gets Alabama at home. They have to go to. Man, SEC is going to be weird in 2024. I've bought every game since like 2014, but I am going to start skipping some years as I think the games are too similar year on year now. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I understand that. For me, having them via Game Pass, it's okay because I pay the $15 a month or whatever it is for Game Pass, so it doesn't really bother me all that much. I just have them when they're available. Worst year since Saban's year one incoming. Georgia fans have been so whiny about having to play Alabama. What's their schedule? They have to go to Alabama. They have to go to Kentucky. They have to go to Ole Miss. They have to go to Texas. Those are two tough games in Alabama and Texas. Home, they get Auburn at home, Florida at a neutral site, State, and Tennessee. We just got to see how some of these teams ultimately compete in 2023 to understand what they are in 2024. But this certainly is going to set up for some key clashes each and every week that I'm very, very excited about. Oh, here's a chart. I love it. Love a good chart. Georgia should have to play an extra hard schedule for how easy it is this year. I haven't seen what their schedule is this year. 2023 Georgia schedule. I didn't spell Georgia correctly in the typing, which is great. In real news, the best game of all time, Power Wash Simulator, is getting SpongeBob levels in July. I'm happy for you, Heldy. I'm happy for you. I got to tell you, you have the market cornered on being a fan of bad movies and bad video games. The schedule for the Georgia Bulldogs, the Georgia football team in 2023. Our first two games are home games against UT Martin and Ball State. So that's a great start. And then we have to go. Then we host South Carolina, and then we host UAB. So we got 4 straight home games to start the year. And then we go to Auburn. We host Kentucky. We go to Vandy. We host Florida. We play Florida at TIAA Bank Stadium. Excuse me, it's a neutral site game. We play Minnesota. We play Missouri. I can't read. Sorry, my brain. That was an aneurysm right there. We host Ole Miss at Tennessee, at Georgia Tech, SEC title game. Yeah, that schedule's soft. Bailey, I'm going to Silverstone this year, Chris, for the first time. I'm very excited for that. Wow, Bailey, that's awesome. That should be a lot of fun. My favorite game is not Halo 3. Can I share a hot take? I've played them. I've just never finished them all. The Halos. Because I was a Sony guy growing up. Had a PS1, had a PS2, had a PS3. Had a PS4 for a little bit. But I got an Xbox One. And then I got a Series X. And we had a 360 in college where we played NCAA Football 14 a lot. So I should probably go back and beat all those games at some point. All right, folks, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to edit this show and post it for the podcast audience. Feel free to get yourself ready for tomorrow's show. Cornerback room rankings on tomorrow's show, 1 through 32. I have not started the deep dive yet. I will do so later today. And we will have the debates tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun. Heldy's going to have the last word here. He says, well, it's a thing where if you weren't experiencing the multiplayer as it was going, then there isn't much point. The campaigns were fire, though. Yeah, I mean, I do want to play the campaigns of all those games. Respect Jalen Johnson when it comes to it. All right, Bailey. I'll do what I can. It's not a great. It's probably not going to be a room that's ranked very highly, but we'll see. That's what we have tomorrow's show for. So, all right, appreciate everybody being here. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and I will talk to y'all tomorrow.